Good evening and welcome to Money Matters. My name is Charlie Huntington and I'm the Public Relations Chairperson for Life Sciences PA. Life Sciences PA is the voice of advancement in the state of Pennsylvania for the biotech, pharma, life science, CRO, and healthcare IT industries. Tonight, we continue our special series on science leaders in our local community. Before we get started, I want to remind our viewers that from time to time, financial issues relating to life sciences, healthcare, or technology matters and companies may be discussed on the show. These discussions are not and should be not viewed as financial advice. Moreover, since this program is pre-recorded and shown at a later date, please keep in mind that the information may no longer be relevant nor current. You should always check with your financial advisor before entering into any financial transaction. I'm pleased to have with me as my co-host Kimon Hatza. Kimon is a business attorney and partner with GrowthCounsel LLC in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. His focus is in the life science, healthcare, and information technology areas. Welcome, Kimon.
Thanks, Charlie. Happy to be here.
Kimon, describe the new model that some law firms have adopted, and I know I understand that this approach is included in what your firm offers.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. One of the programs that we offer for our clients is an outside general counsel service. There are an awful lot of companies out there, early stage companies, small companies, even a lot of mid-sized companies who have ongoing need for business counsel services, but they really don't have the resources or a need for a full-time general counsel, let alone, a full, in-house, service of attorneys. We have found that this has been a really successful program for us. For one thing, it allows us, we sit with a company and we say, all right, how much are you using of an attorney's time on average in any given month? And then we figure out a retainer that makes sense for them. We make ourselves available. We discount our price for the benefit of getting that retainer, and then we make ourselves available for whatever the client needs in any given month. And some months it's more and some months it's less, but it kind of works itself out. The good thing for both us and for the client is we really get to know the client's business intimately. And so we can become more efficient. We become better lawyers for them because we can handle things more efficiently. We anticipate things that are coming and nip them in the bud before they become a big problem. We traffic cop a little bit and identify issues that maybe we don't handle, but we can direct to counsel that has a different expertise that can handle those things before they become a big problem. So all in all, it's been a successful program for us. It's grown a lot and we're looking to grow it some more.
And I'm just curious, how far, to what extent would the outside world know that in this role you're describing, that you are from outside the company versus inside the company? Would you necessarily have an email address, a company email address?
We do not typically do that, and lots of times, unless it involves a transaction where there's outside counsel on the other side, okay, and we need to be involved in negotiations or something like that, you may not even know that we're involved. Only the company would know that we're
So you're providing coaching as well.
We are. We're trying to give them guidance, keep them on the path, and help them avoid any significant pitfalls.
And as you say, what's true today with these companies will not be true tomorrow. They're either going to grow or they're not going to grow. So that you've got to be able to sort of change your business model, I imagine.
You have to be nimble enough to adjust as your clients adjust and the industry adjusts.
Well, I know you guys have had success with that model, and I wish you continued success with it.
Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate it.
I want to remind our viewers that this is how you can get a question that you may have answered on a future show.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, M-O-N-E-Y, -matters, M-A-T-T-E-R-S, TV.com.
It's with great pleasure that I introduce Al Gianchetti. Al has 25 years of drug development and commercialization experience, including 10 years in the cardiovascular metabolic therapeutic areas. He was Chief Commercial Officer of Vanda Pharmaceuticals and Vice President of R&D at GlaxoSmithKline. He holds degrees from the University of Delaware as well as Drexel, and Al is presently the CEO of XyloCor Therapeutics. Welcome to the show, Al.
Thank you, Charlie.
Tell us about XyloCor Therapeutics and how they found you.
Well, they found me through a colleague I worked with at GSK, and he knew the founders of the company, and they were looking for someone with cardiovascular experience, which I had from my time at GSK. So I got a chance to meet the two founders, Dr. Ron Crystal, who's one of the pioneers and world experts in gene therapy, as well as Dr. Todd Rosengart, who's one of the pioneers and leaders in cardiovascular treatment therapies. I was introduced to the technology when I met them and was so impressed with the potential that the drugs have that they're developing to help people with cardiovascular disease that it was a very easy decision for me to join the company.
Sounds like a perfect fit. And keeping in mind we're a financial talk show, can you describe in layman's terms what the technology is?
Sure. We're developing gene therapy for our lead program for patients with chronic refractory angina. So this is a disease where patients have limited coronary blood flow, and it manifests itself when they exert themselves physically, and they get chest pain, and then they really can't function fully. So we're actually delivering the gene that's responsible for the production of new blood vessels to help restore the blood flow to the heart that's not getting sufficient blood flow so that they can resume their normal living and daily activities.
And I'm just curious, where did the company's name come from?
XyloCor, well, that came from one of the founders, Ron Crystal. His son is a percussionist, a professional percussionist, and plays the xylophone. So that's where the xylo part comes from, and the core part from coronary artery disease. So XyloCor.
Al, you touched upon this just a moment ago, but if you could expand on it a little bit. Talk a little bit again about the patient group that you're targeting out there.
It's an important consideration because these are very specific patients that we're treating. So patients with angina, chronic angina, as I mentioned, have a supply deficit in terms of when they exert themselves, the supply isn't sufficient during times of exertion when the heart's beating faster. So they get chest pain as a result, and it can be really debilitating chest pain that might feel like they're having a heart attack. So there's medications to treat these patients, and many are managed well by medications, the currently approved anti-anginal medications. And then if they become refractory to the anti-anginal medications, then they'll go on to a procedure, either coronary artery bypass surgery, where you're bypassing the blocked arteries, or a procedure involving potentially stents where they're opening up the artery. But what happens is many times patients are not eligible for these mechanical interventions to open the artery or bypass the artery. So they have no treatment options, and we call them no-option refractory angina patients. And that's the population we're focusing on initially, is treating patients with refractory angina, so they're not getting better on medication, and they're also not eligible for these mechanical interventions.
Is there anything out there for these no-option patients? I mean, is there any treatment out there now that can help them?
No, currently there's nothing for these patients. So we have a very high unmet need population of patients. Their chest pain can become so debilitating that they end up resigning from the normal activities because they so often get chest pain from exerting themselves. They learn to become sedentary to avoid the chest pain. So they become very sedentary. That can exacerbate or worsen their obesity, other comorbidities like diabetes. So their general health status can spiral downward, and it's very unfortunate. I would also mention that, the number one reason or the number one cost for emergency room visits in the United States is chest pain. And it's because these patients, when their chest pain doesn't resolve, they have to go to the emergency room to rule out that they're not having a heart attack. And oftentimes they're not, but they just have to be sure.
So, in light of that, do you have any competitors right now in the
Well,
industry?
as I mentioned, there's no current options for these quote-unquote no-option patients. There are currently approved anti-anginal medications, which are quite effective, but once they're at the point where they no longer work, and the mechanical interventions, if they're not eligible for those interventions, then there are no options for these patients. So there's nothing for them. There are some other experimental approaches, including cell-based therapies or stem cell therapies, other types of gene therapies that are being researched. But we think our approach has the most sound scientific backing.
Okay, thank you.
How are you presently funding the company?
So last year we raised our Series A venture round, and we have two venture capital firms that have co-led the investment. Sofanova Ventures of Menlo Park, California, and Life Science Partners of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And they're two investors who are very seasoned, they're very experienced and very well respected in the life sciences world.
Congrats on attracting them.
Thank you.
What would success look like in 5 years?
Well, to me, success revolves around the patient. And these patients have no treatment options right now. And in my mind, success comes when we can effectively give these patients an option that will help them resume their normal activities, whether it be fishing, golf, or even just playing with their grandchildren. I mean, these are things that some of these people just can't do. So restoring them back to a quote-unquote normal life where they can do the things they enjoy. These patients, on average, are between 60 and 65. So they have years ahead of them. So our success is being able to restore them to those activities again. And to do that, we need to show in our first trial, which we're about to undertake, that the drug is both safe and effective, and then go through the regulatory process to get the product approved over the longer term.
So for right now, the patients are being told, we can't operate on you, you wouldn't be a good candidate, and we're sorry. And that's where you say they become sedentary and things snowballs, right?
That's correct. It's a frustrating situation for these patients and for their caregivers, their cardiologists and their healthcare providers, cardiac surgeons. They don't have any options for these patients that are proven. And so everyone's very eager to, explore this new option for patients, and we're excited about getting into the clinic and hopefully proving that this works.
Okay. The majority of gene therapy has been for rare diseases. Why do you expect the economics to be better in your case?
Yeah, refractory angina certainly is not a rare disease or an orphan disease. Of course, it's not as broad as general cardiovascular disease. It's a subset. Chronic angina is a subset of coronary artery disease, and refractory angina is a subset of chronic angina, but there's still many, many more patients than you would see with a rare disease. The advantage to that is that you get some degree of economies of scale because you're going to be treating more patients if your drug works and is safe.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How does the industry justify the cost of gene therapy?
Well, I think in a couple of ways. One is, right now it's thought to be one-time treatment, one procedure, and that's it. And rather than taking a drug over several years, it's perceived to be one-time treatment. I think that's a very important factor. The other is that in many cases, gene therapy can treat the underlying cause of the disease, not just the symptoms or mask the symptoms, and in some cases could even cure diseases. So I think those are two very important factors contributing to the value that gene therapy brings.
And any thoughts on how we might resolve? I mean, people change jerseys in the healthcare space all the time. I'm going to be with one insurer this year and another one that my employer has suggested I go to next year, and I may not want to pay for a treatment that otherwise would in one shot you're paying basically 10 years worth of treatments. I don't know. Where is the industry beginning to work on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question to answer. I think, there's certainly been a lot of innovation. There's a couple of gene therapies that have been approved, and And so there are some innovative approaches to pricing and reimbursement. I think, our focus is, do the best we can for the patient, provide the best value by helping them get back to their normal activities, and, the rest will have to work out as we go.
Al, I'm going to go off topic for a second and move to the personal side. I don't know how we discussed this initially, but I know that you're a huge music fan, in particular a huge jazz fan. I was wondering if you could tell our viewers a little bit about how your interest in music and in jazz developed.
I think I remember how this came up because when I was interviewed by Dr. Ron Crystal, I noticed a big Miles Davis photo outside of his office, and I commented on it, and he was surprised that I knew who Miles Davis was, and he and I are both big jazz fans. So, I've been a jazz fan for many years. I'm a musician. I actually play in a rock band. I like rock music too. My band is called Civil Discord, and we recorded our first album last year. Here in the Philadelphia area, and we released it last year. So music is in my roots and always will be.
And your son's a musician as well?
No, my kids all played musical instruments for a short period of time, but didn't stick with it, unfortunately. I hope they get back to it, but no. Yeah.
There have been a lot of, we talked before the show, in fact, from a meeting that Charlie was at this morning, but there have been a lot of really highly educated folks that work in the life sciences space that have been laid off by big pharma and other companies in recent years. And a lot of those folks are looking at, maybe starting their own company with maybe with a chemical or something that they've been working on for years inside a company. What advice would you have for someone who's considering, maybe starting their own company around some technology or something that they've been working on for years?
I would say, first of all, reflect back on the training you've received, whether it be at big pharma or small biotechs or whatever your life sciences experience has been. It's been invaluable. What you've learned and accumulated over your career is valuable to somebody. And so if you can apply that to a small company, a startup, as I did, I can just speak from my personal experience. It's very rewarding. It's hard work, but it's exciting. And I would say if you have a technology that you really believe in, I think that's the key. If you have the belief in that technology, then go with it. And if it means with a bigger company, that's fine. Or if it's a small startup, there's lots of opportunities out there.
What would you say are either the biggest challenges or the biggest opportunities for the greater Philadelphia area in terms of sustaining a vibrant life sciences community?
Well, I think, first of all, this area, the Philadelphia area, is rich with talent in the life sciences. Just from the universities and the big pharmaceutical companies that have their heritage here, there's a lot of talent in this area. And it's a reason for a company like mine to be based in the Philadelphia area, because we have such a great talent pool to draw from. I think that's very important. The challenges are that, areas like California and the San Francisco Bay Area and Massachusetts are very aggressively growing in the biotech space, and the states and local governments are making it very attractive for companies to locate there. So hopefully, Pennsylvania will come to the table equally, and because I think we have a great opportunity here, especially in cell and gene therapy, where there have been many successes and a lot of the innovation here in the Philadelphia area.
How would you compare the availability of capital in this area compared to the areas you just mentioned, San Francisco, Southern California, and Massachusetts?
I think you will find most of the capital, when you go into talk to venture funds or investment banks for healthcare or biotech specifically in Boston, New York, and the San Francisco Bay Area. That's where most of them are located. But they're almost agnostic to where they invest. If you have a technology that's attractive and they feel passionate about it, they feel has potential to help patients, and you have a team of talented people who can develop that technology, they don't care if it's in Philadelphia or other. I think the key is that you can make the case that you can put the right talent together, and that's the key, because you could have great assets and great technology, but you need great people to develop them.
Okay, thank you.
So you don't feel like necessarily the venture capitalists need to be based in the Philadelphia area? You think that outside VCs, as you say, Boston, you said San Diego, or you said San Francisco, New York, you think that those VCs, do you think ultimately they'll have a presence here, or it's not necessary?
It's not necessary. I mean, they can assess the technology from anywhere. And, our two co-investors are Sofanova Ventures in Menlo Park, and, they assess the technology based on their expertise that they have, and they're centered there. They have satellite offices elsewhere, and our other investors in Amsterdam, Life Science Partners, and they have a lot of experience, a lot of expertise, and they invest all over the world. I think it's they're agnostic to location.
So we have a few more minutes left, and I wanted to ask you. You have been to Bio for multiple years.
Yes.
And this year we were fortunate enough for it to be in Philadelphia recently. Can you sort of give our viewers an idea of what you saw there, how it differed from past years, and maybe your personal experience as well with where you guys are as a company?
Well, first of all, the Bio International Conference, I think, is a very important conference for our industry. I like to try and go every year. I think there's a lot of value in terms of the sessions they have, the partnering meetings, and the opportunities to interact with colleagues, potential investors, and support functions or companies that can provide to the needs that we have for outsourcing and things of that nature. So it's a very valuable meeting. Compared to 2 years ago, I would say for me personally, with my experience with XyloCor, it's just been much more excitement this year with regard to gene therapy. I think in general, I got a lot more meeting requests. I think I got about 30 meeting requests 2 years ago and about 120 this year.
Wow.
And presented the company overview to a much bigger audience this year than say 2 years ago. So I think that reflects not that people are more interested in hearing from me, but more interested in gene therapy because of recent approvals and excitement and the potential gene therapy has.
So if not Philadelphia, what other areas are hot in terms of geography right now for gene therapy? Where have you seen a presence other than Philly?
Well, I mean, certainly, you have Boston, which is hot for biotech in general, and the Bay Area in San Francisco, and even some in the Maryland, D.C. area as well, and then, of course, in Europe as well.
Okay.
So there's many areas, but I think, particularly, you have several companies in the Philly area, and some of the technology coming out of Penn, and of course out of New York at Cornell and others. So the East Coast certainly is as well.
That's great. That's great. Well, we are in our closing time at this point. Kimon, any final remarks?
I was interested in what Al might think about the Eagles' chances this year.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think with Carson Wentz, I'm from Philly. I not just work here, but I bleed Eagles green just like the rest of everybody who lives here. And I think that, with Carson Wentz having a full preseason to prepare, and with the adding of Deshaun Jackson and some other changes they've made in the offseason, I think they have great potential this year. I'd bet on them.
It's great. It's great. So what what would you say your goals would be for the next 5 years with your band or with your music? Just take us in that direction. And our viewers might be interested, your son, actually, Kimon referenced your son. Our viewers might be interested from a social media standpoint, what happened when you tried to promote what you guys were doing, and what happened when your son was able to promote it.
Yeah, so my band, again, is Civil Discord. We have a YouTube channel, and we produce, my vision, and I think what the band would love to do is produce our own music, our own original music rather than cover music. And, we have a YouTube channel, and we got, some of our songs got a few hundred hits. But my son, who's just 17, when he was about 14 or 15, his YouTube channel, he got 500,000 hits on one single video he produced. So we have to take a lesson from the younger generation in terms of how to effectively use social media, I think.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I know one of the guys, I'm involved, as we've talked before, Kimon, with Boy Scouts. And there was a fundraiser, and one of the guys in our troop just reached out to a YouTuber and asked for $1,000. And you never would think that this guy would just say, here's $1,000, but he did it.
Wow.
So everyone else is now flocking to get $1,000.
It's impressive.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was. You got to ask, though, right?
That's right.
Just like
That's
in
right.
fundraising for this. So.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we are out of time, and I want to thank you, Al, for your comments and for being our guest tonight. It was a great program. Kimon, thank you. Good luck with the venture inside the venture.
Okay, thank you.
And I want to remind our viewers that next week, Ted McLaughlin, who's CEO of DyeSorb Systems, is going to be with us. And I want to also remind you that Money Matters is now available as a podcast on iTunes as well as Stitcher, as our tape showed you earlier there. And it's also available on mobile devices as Money Matters, the podcast. Thank you and good night.